be up here. Some really beautiful songs this morning, haven't there been? Some really powerful singing. So thank you to both you gents who put that together, and the church raising their voices, the lion in the lungs. Hey, thank you. I think that's been really talk about times of refreshing. So we're in our series together here. We're working through a series that we called Home. You can see it, I think, behind me. Today's particular topic, home. And we've talked about all sorts of different angles, you know. It's a place where we're safe. It's a place where we're challenged to grow. It's a place where we learn how to love, how to practice it. And last week, David Wayne Nelson, he did a lesson, the latest one, hot off the press, on home where Jesus left. And he explained that, the story of the Bible, actually, the story of scriptures, you know it, of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, God's journey with his people, is from Genesis to the temple to Jesus himself and the ultimate reality. It's always been God showing that he wants to make his home with us. He's urging, he's pushing, he's trying to come to be with us. But sin keeps it apart. Our own disobedience and selfishness sets it apart. And yet in John 4:23, Jesus says, listen, anyone who loves me will obey my teaching, and my Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them. That's what God wants. And so he covered the story of the Bible from God's point of view. And today I'm going to actually try to cover it from our point of view, would you believe, where we talk about this topic, home, where we return to. And when you think of that word home, you know, what kind of image comes up in your mind when you hear home? For some of us, it's the door we open at the end of the day. We've heard that a lot, I think, this series. It's that door we just finally get to open up wide, and we walk in and look, there's the chair you sit in. There's your dog or your cat. Your family comes to greet you. I'm sure they come running and and laughing and crying with joy. That's home. For others in the room, sometimes they're crying, not with joy. Oh, what are you doing here? But for others of us, home is the country where we come. When we think about that, we think of the people we grew up with, the people we love. We think of the food that we're missing out on. We try to return as often as we can to see these people, eat that food, and a culture that's just so good. That's so right, so easy to do. For many of us in this room, home is this church. This is one of our homes. This is a place where we have our brothers and sisters. This is a place where we're safe and we can just let go. This is the kind of place that has been the theme of the series, trying to describe and explore them. But wherever you're from and wherever you're at, actually, there's one thing we have in common. This world is our home. It's kind of that song we sing that kind of pursues that. But there's some level where this is true. This is our combined home. This is our living room. This world is where you're from. It's where you grew up. It's where you were born. It's where you'll die. And when Jesus returns, it's where he will come to raise you up. And where he will make his home, is what Scripture says, with us. But then we think about the world we live in, and it's broken, isn't it? It's a broken, desperate kind of a place. The Bible tells that story over and over again, and we don't even need to rehash it because we experience it daily, right? We see the brokenness. We see it with the disasters we see in the news every day, the weather events we've been experiencing. We see it in the way that our world gets ravaged. We see it in the way that diseases and pandemics sweep through and ravage our very body. We see it in the limited resources that are hoarded or depleted, and whole communities are ravaged and suffering. And you can probably even see it in yourself. You know, even this week maybe. You can think of a time when not just the violence people commit against each other, but the way we talk about each other, the way we treat each other, the way we talk about ourselves. Some of the self-talk in this room this week probably has been ravaging, has been broken, has been crippling, has been suffering, just poured out on you. And so just like this world, we're like us, I guess. We are broken. This world is a broken. Genesis puts it this way. It says, we were made from the dust of the earth, and when we were cursed, it bonded and bound up with us, and it suffered with us, and we suffer with it. We're bonded together in suffering and broken. And I think probably that's part of what happens to me, at least maybe you, is we sense this cosmic brokenness, this universal suffering and frustration, that things just aren't quite what they should be. And so we yearn for something beyond this. Probably many of you in here because you yearn for something beyond what we see. And one of my favorite, probably my very favorite book of the Bible, Hebrews, has a beautiful way of picturing this final place, this destination. It says, when you look back at the stories of the Bible, you hear the stories of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Sarah and all of those people of faith. And it says that all of those people who lived by faith died longing for a better country, a heavenly. You can probably relate. Died longing every day, a city for them. You know, when election year starts rolling around again, we hear the empty promises all over again. You can probably relate to that when you get the news. Somebody else that you know has cancer or dementia or heart disease, or the list goes on. We probably relate to that when we've lost our job, or when we have more bills than money, or when the laundry has to be done again and again and again and again and again. On these kinds of days, I think, at least for me, I shake my head and I say, I just want a city with foundations in it. Somewhere where things don't break down or grow old or die too young. Somewhere where everything's right. A city with foundations. That's what I long for. And the author of Hebrews, that's what he longs for. That's what he's saying, is that this is what the people of faith were aiming for when they died. They trusted God in his promises, not yet having what he promised, but they trusted. And Hebrews actually describes this as not a place that's far away, but it actually says in chapter 2 that this is the world to come. Hebrews has in his mind a new creation when he says these things. And Paul, doing the roll call of the saints, I suppose, and just bringing up all these names. Paul as well, he yearns, you hear that in his writings. You hear that in his life. He yearns for this, there's like this gnawing ache right on that seat of his being. And he says, it's like he can hear creation groan. That's a really visceral way to describe what he's seeing. He says, it's like I can hear in my ears the groaning of creation. And I think there's probably two ways we can understand that. One of those is there's a type of groaning that is a herald for disaster, right? So for a long time, they didn't think this was quite right. But the survivors of the Titanic, many of them talked about that. They said as they saw the ship sinking into the depths of the ocean, they could hear on the wind the sound of groaning. The ship groaning as it sank and crushed and was destroyed. And I wonder if that's what Paul's hearing. Is he hearing the groaning of a ship that's going down? As creation suffers her death throes, is there a groan that she outwardly gives? I actually don't think so. So, what I think Paul is saying is something more like this. So, several months ago, it was a Sunday morning, we were sitting down for breakfast and Rosie comes in, Ambrose is chomping away at his oats. And she's just saying, hey, this is what, and she leans over and she groans, right? She holds her belly and she groans. And I didn't say, she's going down. The ship is breaking apart. No, I knew that this was the beginning. This was a herald not of disaster, but of beauty and honor and glory and goodness. This was the beginning of a new birth. that the little girl was on her way, a new creation. And that's actually what Paul says in Romans 8. He says that when he hears on the wind the groaning of creation, he compares it to a woman in childbirth. He says that something new is going to be born. He says that something has happened, that when Jesus returns and he transforms us, everything will be changed. Everything you know, all creation, all the universe, every reality you're aware of will be made new, will be transformed in the blink of an eye. And that's really nice and lovely and cool as a theology lesson. That's kind of a nice promise to be given. But then we go back to that kind of a list of things people experience, of all of these diagnoses being given to people they love, of bills piling up, laundry piling up, of people dying too young or growing very old in pain. And so this is a lovely hope to one day receive, that the world will one day be redeemed. But what about today? Is there anything we can give? Is there anything God gives us for this groaning that we have today, inwardly? We groan, seeking redemption. Or are we just supposed to kind of wait around? Earlier I said that this church has been a home for many people. Let's come back to that. This church is our home, where this is a place where we return to repeatedly. This is a door we open, and there's my chair. Some of you literally have your chair. And have you ever really paid attention to the kinds of things that God says about his church and his people? I'll just pick up some, What he says about is that we who are baptized into Christ, we're raised up as a new creation. We are a new creation. He says, whoever believes in Jesus has already crossed over from death into life. He says, you have already experienced a new beginning, a new life in your hand and in your heart. He says that the church's very existence is a testament to the cosmic powers, the powers that be, that their time is coming to an end. This isn't the way things are going to be forever. There's a new master in town. There's a new sheriff in town. God's telling us that actually this church, or whatever church you're visiting from, is a foretaste of an age to come, of a future reality here we experience. And that may be hard to believe. You're like, that still sounds like a promise, John. That sounds like God saying some nice things, whispering sweet nothings. But, I've still got bills to pay. Well, let me give you some examples. I think this is how I have seen redemption that happens underneath your very nose. So a few years ago, you may have heard the story of Jay, who talked about his struggles, relationship struggles, but alcohol was a big one. Dealing with addiction, and a crippling addiction that was taunting him everywhere he went. Did you know that last week he celebrated 1 year of sobriety? And he stands up and now he can preach redemption. He can thank God for the grace. And Jay, just so you know, you don't have to remain perfect. You don't have to be the emblem of goodness and purity. He wants you to stay on the path, but if you mess it up, God is here to forgive. That's what he does. He's a God of redemption. Or we have the story of Trish. Trish tells the story of how she realized at one point that something had shifted underneath her. She looked around at her life and she said, I trust my husband more than I trust Jesus. I have left the Lord, and now I've been led into a barren land. I've been led into the wilderness. And she realized she needed to make her way back to God. And that's a story she can tell all on her own. But she knew the goodness that he had to offer, and she wanted that. So she came back. And now look at her. She's one of the most on fire for the Lord type of people you can meet. And one more story I'll give you is many years ago, Amy came to actually this church. She was studying at a Bible college. And her background, and she can tell this story. I won't give you much. But I will say her family was rigidly Catholic. And Pakistan, her country, was rigidly Muslim. Now, Pakistan is actually the second largest Muslim country in the world. And so this place, there is sporadic, severe persecution of Christians that happens there. Stories come out, you can look it up, Wikipedia, this one. You know, pretty gruesome stuff. There's children in the room, so I won't go into detail. But grenades thrown into churches. Children forcibly converted, and if they don't convert, then they suffer punishment, which I'm not going to tell you what those are. Or maybe as well, public beatings and sexual assault on men as well as women. This is the kind of thing that was going on in Pakistan, still does happen. So can you imagine her coming here, finishing up with her studies and then going home? And her family had abandoned. Her country had no place. She was destitute and she was isolated. Can you imagine what it would be like for her to go back? So this church lived out the gospel story and offered her a job and effectively ransomed her from her family. Become a language. When I talked to her about this, and I've got permission for all three of these, from all of those people, when I talked to her, she said, yes, this church adopted me. I've been adopted by Wedding Day. And she celebrates that we gave her a home. Redemption is something that's happening every day. It's happening right under your nose. It's happening all around you. God is a God of new beginnings, new creation, of restoration, of forgiveness and mercy, and a powerful God who saves. And it's happening today, right under your nose. If you just look around and see. It's not a pie in the sky. It's not some future promise we don't receive for a long, long time. It's here, it's now, and it's right here among us. So yes, we are bound to a world that's broken. That's true. We do, yes, see devastating effects of that. In creation, in our own bodies, in our relationships, how we treat one another, how we treat ourselves. Yes, these things are true, but that is not the final word. God has a plan for this cosmos, and we who call on his name get to see that play out every day in our lives, in the lives of the people we love. And if you are in need of that redemption, you should call on him today. If you have not yet come to him in faith and put him on in baptism, if you have not surrendered to him and you want that redemption, today's the day. Or if you find yourself in need of prayer, if you find you are in need of God's restoration and you need his mercy, we have, I think Gina, I'm going to throw her under the bus. She's going to be at the back. The elder's always ready. I think even at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. Chris is. But wherever you're at this week, look at those passages and find hope. Creation's groaning. It's not a precursor to disaster. You are groaning. You will be redeemed. God is a God of restoration. And it's the beginning of something glorious, and you're going to be there to see. Let's pray.